I never thought a stupid comment about overpriced coffee would change my entire life. One minute, I'm the invisible barista spilling lattes in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, and the next, I'm tangled up in the most complicated, hilarious, and completely unexpected relationship with the one person who seemed untouchable. Emily Crawford, the ice queen from the penthouse. She had everything: money, power, designer clothes that probably cost more than my annual rent. And me? I had student debt, mismatched socks, and a talent for saying exactly the wrong thing at exactly the right moment. But here's the thing about walls people build around themselves. Sometimes all it takes is one sarcastic joke to make them crumble. And when they do, everything changes. If you love stories about unexpected connections and real emotions, subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales like this one. I've lived in this building for 2 years, and Emily Crawford has looked at me exactly 3 times. Not looked at, like actually seeing me. More like her eyes accidentally landed on my general vicinity before sliding away like I was part of the wallpaper. Which, honestly, I might as well have been. The Roosevelt Arms wasn't fancy, but it wasn't a dump either. It was one of those pre-war Brooklyn buildings where the lobby had marble floors that had seen better days and an elevator that groaned like it was personally offended every time you asked it to move. I lived on the 3rd floor in a studio apartment where the kitchen was technically just a corner with ambitions. Emily lived in the penthouse, which I'd never seen but imagined was basically Versailles with a better view. I first noticed her about 6 months after I moved in. Hard not to, really. She was the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. Tall, with sharp cheekbones, and dark hair always pulled back in a perfect bun. She wore tailored suits in colors I didn't even know had names: charcoal, slate, midnight navy. Meanwhile, I was usually covered in coffee stains and wearing jeans that had given up on life. We'd pass each other in the lobby, and it was always the same. She'd stride in with her phone pressed to her ear, talking about closing deals and quarterly projections, while I shuffled toward the subway with my bag falling off my shoulder and my hair in what I generously called a bun, but was actually more of a yarn ball attacked by a cat situation. The thing that got me wasn't that she was rich or successful. Good for her, right? It was the way she looked through people like we were ghosts. The doorman, Mr. Kowalski, who'd worked there for 30 years. Invisible. Mrs. Chen from 2B who always had cookies. Transparent. Me? I don't think Emily even registered that I had a face. I worked at Brewhaven, this tiny coffee shop in Park Slope that attracted the kind of people who had opinions about water temperature and asked if our beans were ethically sourced with proper shade-grown certification. My manager, Dave, was convinced we were going to be the next big thing. I was convinced we'd be lucky if we survived another winter. "Sarah, you burned the milk again," Dave said one Tuesday morning, his mustache twitching with disappointment. "It's not burned, it's caramelized," I shot back, dumping the scalded mess down the sink. Very French. It's very unemployed is what it is. But Dave never actually fired me, probably because I worked for basically minimum wage and showed up on time. Well, on time-ish. Brooklyn time. That afternoon, I was walking back to the Roosevelt Arms, juggling my bag, my phone, and a sandwich I'd optimistically thought I'd eat on the subway before realizing the train was packed tighter than my jeans after Thanksgiving. The November wind was doing that thing where it pretended to be refreshing, but was actually just stealing your body heat. I pushed through the lobby doors and nearly collided with Emily Crawford. "Sorry," I yelped, stumbling back. My sandwich went flying, executed a perfect spiral, and landed face down on the marble floor. Of course it did. Emily's eyes flicked down to the sandwich, then up to me. For exactly 2 seconds, I existed in her universe. Her expression was the visual equivalent of, "Who are you and why are you in my way?" Then she stepped around me, heels clicking with authority, and disappeared into the elevator. I stood there, staring at my destroyed sandwich, and felt something stubborn spark in my chest. Not anger, exactly. More like determination. I was tired of being invisible. "You good, Sarah?" Mr. Kowalski asked from behind his desk. "Yeah," I said, picking up the sad remains of my lunch. "Just peachy." That night, I lay in my apartment, staring at the ceiling and listening to my upstairs neighbors argue about whose turn it was to buy toilet paper. Through my window, I could see the lights from Manhattan glittering across the river, and somewhere above me, Emily Crawford was probably sipping wine that cost more than my security deposit. I didn't know it then, but everything was about to change. And it would all start with coffee, the one thing I actually knew something about. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were when we got our organic bean delivery at Brew Haven, and Dave always made a huge production about it, like we were receiving the Declaration of Independence instead of overpriced coffee. I was restocking the pastry case when she walked in. Emily Crawford, in my coffee shop, wearing a cream-colored coat that probably cost more than my car, if I had a car. She looked around the place like an anthropologist visiting a remote village, taking in the mismatched chairs and the chalkboard menu I'd drawn last week, complete with a coffee cup that looked more like a blob with a handle. "I'll take a cappuccino," she said when she reached the counter. Not hi or good morning, just straight to business. She didn't even look at me, just pulled out her phone. "Sure thing," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My hands were already getting that nervous tremor I got around people who seemed to have their lives together. "For here or to go?" To go. Of course. Why would she stay in our humble establishment? I made the cappuccino, and I actually tried. Like, really tried. Proper foam, decent latte art. I even managed a heart shape that only looked a little bit like a malformed kidney. I handed it to her with what I hoped was a professional smile. Emily took a sip immediately, and I watched her face transform from neutral to what could only be described as personal offense. "This is acceptable," she said, in a tone that suggested it absolutely wasn't. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the months of being ignored. Maybe it was Dave's constant criticism. Maybe I was just tired of people who acted like coffee snobbery was a personality trait. "Wow, don't overwhelm me with praise," I said. "I might get a big head." Her eyes snapped to mine, really looked at me, for the first time ever. "Excuse me?" "Nothing," I said, already regretting it. Just that acceptable is the kind of review that really makes a barista feel seen, you know? Right up there with, "This won't kill me," and, "I guess this is technically coffee." I expected her to storm out, maybe complain to Dave. Instead, one corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but not a smile either. "And what would you prefer? False flattery?" "I'd prefer honesty that doesn't sound like you're reviewing a tax return," I shot back. "It's coffee, not a corporate merger. You're allowed to have feelings about it." "I do have feelings. I feel it's acceptable." "That's not a feeling. That's a performance review." This time she definitely almost smiled. "What's your name?" Sarah Palmer." "Well, Sarah Palmer, perhaps you should focus less on customer feedback and more on the fact that you steamed this milk at least 10 degrees too hot." My mouth fell open. "How do you—" "I know coffee." She took another sip, like she was proving a point. "This is acceptable because the beans are good quality, but your technique needs work. The temperature matters. The texture matters. Okay, coffee sommelier, I get it," I interrupted. "Let me guess. You only drink single origin beans handpicked by Tibetan monks during the full moon?" "Single origin, yes. Tibetan monks, no. That would be impractical. She was definitely fighting a smile now. Ethiopian yirgacheffe, if you must know. Light roast, properly prepared. Of course it is, I muttered. Emily tilted her head, studying me like I was a puzzle she hadn't decided whether to solve. You live in my building, 3rd floor. You noticed? I couldn't keep the surprise out of my voice. I notice everything. She glanced at her watch, sleek, minimalist, probably worth more than my entire apartment. I have a meeting. She turned to leave, and I thought that was it. Weird interaction. Probably never speak again. Back to being invisible. But then she paused at the door and looked back. The coffee really was acceptable, Sarah Palmer, for a dive bar masquerading as a cafe. Hey, we're not a dive bar. Of course not. Dive bars have better lighting. And then she was gone, leaving me standing there with my mouth open and a strange, fizzy feeling in my chest that I couldn't quite name. Dave appeared from the back room. Was that who I think it was? If you think it was the snobby penthouse lady who just insulted our lighting, then yes. Emily Crawford practically owns half of Brooklyn, Dave said, looking stunned. She comes in here and you give her sass? She started it, I said defensively. But I was smiling. And when Emily came back the next day, and the day after that, I was still smiling. Because suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. And neither was she. Emily became a regular, not a normal regular. She didn't chit-chat with other customers or linger over her coffee like the laptop crowd who treated our cafe like a co-working space. But every weekday at 7:47 a.m., she'd walk in, order a cappuccino, and engage me in what I started calling our coffee wars. Your foam is inconsistent, she said one Monday, examining her cup like it contained evidence for a criminal trial. Your personality is inconsistent, I countered. Sometimes you almost seem human. Almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. Did you just quote? Wait, do rich people know colloquial sayings? Her lips twitched. I wasn't always rich, Sarah. That stopped me. I'd just assumed. Well, I'd assumed she'd emerged fully formed from some luxury incubator, probably wearing designer baby clothes. The idea of Emily as anything other than the polished, perfect version standing in front of me seemed impossible. Really? Really. She took a sip of her coffee. This is better, by the way. The temperature is correct. Oh my God, was that an actual compliment? Should I call the news? Don't let it go to your head. But something had shifted. She stayed an extra 3 minutes that day. It doesn't sound like much, but for Emily Crawford, 3 minutes might as well have been 3 hours. By the second week, we'd progressed from coffee critique to actual conversation. I learned she ran a real estate development firm she'd built from nothing. She learned I had a degree in English literature that I was doing absolutely nothing with, except occasionally correcting grammar on bathroom stalls. Why coffee? She asked one day. If you have a degree. I shrugged, wiping down the espresso machine. Why not coffee? It pays rent. Mostly. That's not an answer. Maybe I don't have an answer. I looked at her, really looked at her. In the morning light streaming through the window, she seemed less intimidating, more human. Why real estate, if we're asking invasive questions? Control, she said immediately. Real estate is tangible. You buy something, improve it, and it's yours. No ambiguity. No surprises. Sounds lonely. Her eyes sharpened. Excuse me? Nothing surprises you? Nothing's ambiguous? That means nothing changes. Nothing. I struggled for the word. Nothing challenges you. I have plenty of challenges in my life, thank you. Yeah? Name one that didn't come from a spreadsheet. She stared at me for a long moment, and I thought I'd finally crossed a line. Then she did something completely unexpected. She laughed. An actual, genuine laugh that made her whole face transform. "You're exhausting," she said, but she was smiling. "You're welcome." The next day, she brought me coffee. Not from Brew Haven, from some fancy place in Manhattan that had a 20-minute wait, and beans that cost more per pound than gold, probably. "I can't accept this," I said, even as my hands reached for the cup like they had their own agenda. "It's not a bribe. It's education." She gestured for me to drink. "Tell me what you taste." I took a sip and nearly transcended to another plane of existence. Oh my God. Specifically, I taste my inadequacy as a human being. "What is this?" "Geisha coffee from Panama. Notice the floral notes? The bergamot finish?" "I notice it costs more than my rent." "Sarah." Fine. I took another sip, actually trying this time. "It's delicate, kind of tea-like. And yeah, I guess there's something floral. This is what you drink every day?" "Not every day. This is special." "Why bring it to me then?" She looked away, and for the first time since I'd known her, Emily Crawford seemed uncertain. "Because you were right. About challenges. About things that surprise you." She met my eyes again. "You surprise me." My heart did a weird little flip that I absolutely did not want to examine. "Yeah, well, you're full of surprises yourself, penthouse lady." "Emily. You can call me Emily." "Okay, Emily." Her name felt strange in my mouth, intimate somehow. "You can call me Sarah, which you already do. So, never mind." She smiled. A real smile, not the polite business smile or the almost smile. "You're very strange, Sarah Palmer." Takes one to know one, Emily Crawford. And just like that, we weren't just the barista and the penthouse lady anymore. We were something else. Something neither of us had a name for yet. That weekend, I saw her in the building lobby, and she actually acknowledged me. More than acknowledged, she walked over. "What are you doing Saturday night?" she asked, no preamble. Probably watching Netflix and eating ramen." "Come to dinner with me instead." I blinked. "Like, dinner? Is there another kind?" "I mean, yeah, there's like 20 kinds. There's casual dinner, work dinner, pity dinner, date dinner." I stopped talking because my brain finally caught up to my mouth. What kind of dinner are we talking about? Emily's expression was unreadable. "The kind where I want to spend more time with you outside of a coffee shop. The kind where I'd like to know more about the woman who insults my personality and somehow makes me want to come back every day." Oh. "Okay," I said, because apparently I'd lost the ability to form complex sentences. "Okay. Yes. Dinner. Saturday. I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something nice." After she left, I stood in the lobby for a full 5 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Mr. Kowalski was grinning at me from behind his desk. "Don't say it," I warned him. "Didn't say nothing, Miss Sarah." But he was still grinning when I got into the elevator, and honestly, so was I. I didn't own anything nice. This was a problem I discovered Saturday morning when I opened my closet and confronted the reality of my wardrobe. A graveyard of coffee-stained t-shirts, jeans with strategic holes, and one dress I'd bought for my cousin's wedding 3 years ago that now fit like a sausage casing. "Crisis," I announced to my best friend Mia via FaceTime. "What kind of crisis? Spider in the bathroom or existential dread?" Dinner crisis. With Emily, tonight. I have nothing to wear, and I'm pretty sure she's taking me somewhere where they judge you for not knowing which fork is for fish. Mia's eyes went wide. Wait. Emily? Emily? Penthouse Emily? I thought she didn't know you existed, Emily? Turns out she not only knows I exist, but wants to have dinner with me, and I'm going to ruin it by showing up looking like a homeless person's homeless person. Okay, don't panic. I'm coming over. We're going shopping. 2 hours and 3 stores later, I had a simple black dress that Mia insisted made me look like a mysterious poet who might also know how to use a knife, which was apparently a compliment. I paired it with my only non-sneaker shoes, ankle boots that added 2 inches and made me feel like a baby giraffe learning to walk. At 6:55 p.m., I was standing in my apartment, convinced this was the worst idea I'd ever had. Emily and I had nothing in common. She drank wine that required a sommelier to explain. I thought $2 Chuck was aspirational. She wore clothes that needed professional maintenance. I considered it a victory when I remembered to separate darks and lights in the laundry. The knock on my door came at exactly 7 p.m. Because, of course, Emily was punctual. I opened it, and whatever self-deprecating joke I'd been about to make died on my lips. Emily stood there in a dark green dress that should have been illegal, her hair down for the first time since I'd known her, falling in waves around her shoulders. "Hi," she said, and smiled. "You look beautiful. You look—" I gestured vaguely at all of her. "Words. You look words. I'll take that as a compliment. It's literally the highest praise I'm capable of right now." She laughed, and I grabbed my bag. Well, Mia's bag, because mine had a broken zipper and a mysterious stain, and followed her out. The restaurant was in Manhattan, because of course it was. The kind of place with low lighting, soft jazz, and menus without prices, which I'd learned meant, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. The host knew Emily by name and led us to a corner table that probably required a reservation 3 months in advance. "Emily, this is—" I looked around at the crystal glasses and the white tablecloths. "This is really fancy. Is that okay?" "It's amazing. I'm just trying to calculate how many shifts I'd have to work to afford an appetizer." "You're not paying. I can't let you—" "Sarah." She reached across the table and touched my hand, just briefly. "Let me do this. Please." So I did. We ordered food I couldn't pronounce, and Emily ordered wine that the waiter discussed like it was a historical artifact. When it arrived, she poured me a glass. "Tell me what you think," she said, watching me. I sipped. It tasted like wine. Expensive wine, probably, but still wine. "It's good? Be honest." "Honestly, I can't tell the difference between this and the $10 bottle from Trader Joe's." I expected her to be offended, but instead, she laughed so hard the couple at the next table looked over. "What?" I asked. "Nothing. You're just refreshingly honest." She took a sip of her own wine. "Most people pretend. They say what they think they're supposed to say." "I'm terrible at that," I admitted. "Ask my last performance review." "Tell me about you," Emily said. "Really, not just coffee shop Sarah. Who are you?" So I told her. About growing up in Ohio. About my mom who worked 3 jobs after my dad left. About coming to New York with dreams of being a writer and discovering that dreams didn't pay student loans. I told her about the novel I'd been working on for 4 years that had more deleted scenes than actual chapters, and about how I sometimes felt like I was just treading water, waiting for my real life to start. "What's the novel about?" she asked. "A woman who's invisible," I said, then laughed at the irony. Literally, she wakes up one day and realizes nobody can see her. That's surprisingly on the nose. Yeah, well, write what you know, right? Emily was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the stem of her wine glass. Can I tell you something? Of course. I grew up in foster care, 6 different homes before I aged out at 18. She said it matter-of-factly, but I could hear the weight behind the words. No college fund, no safety net, no family to fall back on. I worked 3 jobs, like your mom, and put myself through community college, then business school. Every single thing I have, I built myself. I stared at her, seeing her completely differently now. Not the intimidating penthouse lady, but someone who'd fought for everything she had. That's incredible, Emily. It's exhausting, she corrected. And lonely. When you spend your whole life proving you're good enough, you forget how to just be, to let people in. She met my eyes. I haven't had a real friend in years, maybe ever. What about partners, relationships? A few. Never anything serious. I was always too focused on work, on the next deal, the next acquisition. She smiled sadly. Turns out you can't acquire companionship on a spreadsheet. Is that what this is? I asked carefully. Companionship? I don't know what this is, Emily admitted. All I know is that you make me laugh. You challenge me. You see me, not my money or my success or my reputation. Just me. My chest felt tight. I see you, I said quietly, and I like what I see. She reached across the table again, and this time she took my hand and held it. Her skin was soft, her grip firm, real. I like what I see too, Sarah Palmer. We stayed until the restaurant closed, talking about everything and nothing. When we finally left, Emily insisted on walking me home, even though it was out of her way. We stood in the lobby of the Roosevelt Arms, and I didn't want the night to end. Thank you, I said. For dinner, for everything. Thank you for saying yes. She hesitated, then leaned in and kissed my cheek. Good night, Sarah. I floated up to my apartment, changed into my ratty pajamas, and lay in bed with a stupid smile on my face. My phone buzzed. Emily, I had a wonderful time tonight. Me too. Same time next week? Emily, how about tomorrow? Me. Tomorrow works. And just like that, everything had changed. We weren't just 2 people who lived in the same building anymore. We were 2 people who were falling for each other, one sarcastic comment at a time. Things moved fast after that. Too fast, maybe, but neither of us wanted to slow down. Emily came to Brewhaven every morning, and we'd extended our conversations to 15, then 20, then 30 minutes. Dave started giving me knowing looks and asking when I was going to introduce him to my lady friend, which made me want to die of embarrassment every single time. But it was the evenings that mattered most. We'd alternate between her world and mine, and watching Emily navigate both was fascinating. One night, I took her to my favorite dive bar in Williamsburg, the kind of place with sticky floors, a jukebox that only played songs from 2003, and a bartender named Snake who definitely had a criminal record. Emily looked around like she'd landed on Mars. You come here willingly? She asked, shouting over someone's terrible rendition of Livin' on a Prayer. It's got character. It's got health code violations. But then I dragged her to the karaoke machine, and after 2 beers, which she drank from the bottle like a champ, I convinced her to sing Don't Stop Believin' with me. We were terrible. Gloriously, catastrophically terrible. But Emily laughed so hard she cried, and afterward, she wrapped her arms around me and said, This is the most fun I've had in years. Another night, she took me to the opera. the actual opera, with programs and fancy seats and people who looked like they'd stepped out of a Jane Austen novel. I fell asleep during the second act, and instead of being mad, Emily just squeezed my hand and whispered, "I hate it too. Want to leave?" We snuck out during intermission like rebellious teenagers and got hot dogs from a street vendor. We ate them on the steps of the Met, and Emily got mustard on her $300 dress and didn't even care. "This is better than the opera," she said. "This is literally a hot dog." "It's a hot dog with you. That makes it better than Wagner." I kissed her then, right there on the steps with the city lights around us and the taste of mustard and happiness on my lips. When we pulled apart, Emily was smiling that real smile, the one that made her look years younger and impossibly beautiful. "I'm falling for you," she said. "Is that okay?" "More than okay." I kissed her again. "I fell for you the first time you insulted my coffee. It really was terrible. It was acceptable at best." We both laughed, and I realized something. We weren't trying to change each other. Emily didn't need to become a dive bar regular, and I didn't need to start drinking $50 wine. We just needed to meet in the middle, to share our worlds and build something new together. The following weeks were a blur of stolen moments and growing closeness. Emily taught me about wine. I could now identify exactly 3 types. And I taught her about karaoke strategy, always end with a power ballad. She took me to art galleries, and I took her to underground comedy shows. She introduced me to her business partner, Marcus, who whispered, "I've never seen her this happy," when she wasn't listening. I introduced her to Mia, who texted me 17 exclamation points followed by, "Marry her." But it wasn't all perfect. We had our first fight about 3 weeks in, when Emily casually mentioned wanting to invest in Brewhaven. "Absolutely not," I said. "Why not? The place needs capital, and No, 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 no." I paced around her penthouse apartment, which was, indeed, basically Versailles with better views. "You can't just throw money at my problems." "I'm not throwing money. I'm making a sound investment." "In your girlfriend's failing coffee shop?" "That's charity, Emily." "Don't call it failing. It is failing, and that's okay. I don't need you to rescue me." She went quiet, her jaw tight. "That's not what I was doing." "Then what were you doing?" "I was trying to help, to be part of your life in a meaningful way." "You are part of my life. You don't have to buy your way into it." The words hung between us, sharp and hurtful. Emily's face closed off, that professional mask sliding back into place. "I should go," I said quietly. "Sarah." But I was already heading for the door. I made it to my apartment before I started crying, angry at myself for overreacting, angry at her for not understanding, angry at the whole situation. My phone buzzed. "Emily." "I'm sorry." "Emily." "You're right. I was trying to fix things instead of just being there for you." "Emily, I'm not good at this, at relationships, at being vulnerable." "Emily, but I'm trying, for you." "Emily, please come back." I stared at the messages for a long moment. Then I grabbed my keys and took the elevator up to the penthouse. Emily opened the door before I could knock, her eyes red like she'd been crying too. "I'm sorry," we both said at the same time. Then we were laughing and crying and holding each other, and Emily whispered against my hair, "I love you. I'm in love with you. And I'm terrified." "Me too," I whispered back. "On all counts." We stayed up all night talking, really talking, about our fears and our hopes, and how to navigate this thing between us that was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. By the time the sun came up, we were tangled together on her couch, exhausted, but happy. "Sarah?" Emily said sleepily. That novel you're writing, about the invisible woman." "Yeah? How does it end?" I thought about it. About being invisible for so long, and about Emily seeing me, really seeing me. About two people from completely different worlds, finding each other just a few floors apart. "She realizes she was never really invisible," I said. "She just hadn't met the right person yet. The one who would look at her and actually see." Emily kissed my forehead. "I like that ending." "Yeah? Yeah." And lying there, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I realized I liked it too. Not just as an ending for my fictional character, but as a beginning for us. Because sometimes the perfect person isn't across the city or across the world. Sometimes they're just a few floors away, waiting for one sarcastic comment about coffee to change everything. And when you find them, when you really see each other, that's when life stops being something you're waiting to start and becomes something you're actually living. That morning, Emily came down to Brewhaven with me. Dave nearly had a heart attack when she walked in, but Emily just smiled and asked if he needed any help with the morning rush. "You know how to make coffee?" Dave asked skeptically. "I've been taking lessons from the best," Emily said, winking at me. She was terrible at it, like impressively terrible. She burned the milk, over-extracted the espresso, and somehow managed to get coffee grounds on the ceiling. But watching her try, watching her laugh at herself and ask me for help and not care that her expensive blouse was covered in coffee stains, made me fall in love with her all over again. "This is harder than closing $1 million deal," she muttered, staring at the espresso machine like it had personally offended her. "That's because coffee is important," I teased. "Real estate? That's just buildings." "You take that back. Make me." She kissed me right there in front of Dave and the early morning customers, and someone actually applauded. "You two are disgusting," Dave said, but he was grinning. "Also, Sarah, you're getting a raise." "Really?" "Really. Someone's got to pay for your girlfriend's coffee mistakes. She's costing me a fortune in wasted beans." We all laughed, and in that moment, surrounded by the smell of coffee and the sound of the espresso machine and the warmth of Emily's hand in mine, I realized something. I didn't need my life to look a certain way to be happy. I didn't need to be a famous author or to have a perfect apartment or to understand expensive wine. I just needed this. Right here. Right now. The months that followed were the happiest of my life. Emily and I found our rhythm. Mornings at Brewhaven, evenings split between penthouse sophistication and Brooklyn dive bars. We hosted dinner parties where we served both caviar and pizza rolls. We went to gallery openings and midnight bowling. We read the Sunday Times in bed and argued about the crossword puzzle. We weren't perfect. We still fought sometimes. About money, about priorities, about whose turn it was to take out the trash. It was always mine, because Emily had never actually taken out trash in her life, and I found that both horrifying and hilarious. But we always talked it through. We always came back to each other. 6 months after our first dinner, Emily sat me down in her penthouse. "I have a proposition," she said. "If this is about investing in Brewhaven again, it's not. Just listen." She took a deep breath. "Move in with me." I stared at her. "What?" "Move in. Here. With me." She gestured around the penthouse. "I know it's fast, and I know it's probably crazy, but, Sarah, I hate going to sleep without you. I hate waking up and having to wait to see you. I hate that we live in the same building but not the same home." "Emily?" And before you say anything about charity or me trying to save you, that's not what this is. This is me being selfish. This is me wanting you close because I'm happiest when you're around. Because you make me laugh and challenge me and see me for who I really am, not who I pretend to be for the world. I felt tears pricking at my eyes. The penthouse seems very... you. I don't want to change that. So we'll make it us. Emily took my hands. We'll put your terrible movie posters on the walls and your weird collection of coffee mugs in the kitchen. We'll make it ours. Together. I looked around the penthouse, all clean lines and expensive furniture, and tried to imagine my chaos mixed with her order. And you know what? I could see it. I could see us. Okay, I said. Okay? Yes, okay. Let's do it. Let's make this ours. Emily kissed me, and it tasted like promises and coffee and home. Moving in was an adventure. Emily discovered I owned approximately 700 books and 0 organizational skills. I discovered she had a secret weakness for terrible reality TV. We compromised on the decor, more warmth, less minimalism, on the rules, no work emails after 8 p.m., and on the coffee. We bought a fancy espresso machine, and I actually learned to use it properly. And life went on. Beautiful, messy, imperfect life. I finally finished my novel. Emily read it in one sitting and cried at the ending. Dave sold Brewhaven to a small chain, and I took a job as their head trainer, teaching other baristas the art of acceptable coffee. Emily expanded her business, but she always made time for dinner, for karaoke, for us. We weren't a fairy tale. We were better. We were real. 2 people from different worlds who found each other and built something neither of us could have imagined alone. And every morning, when I woke up next to Emily in our penthouse that was now covered in my books and her art and our photographs, I thought about that day in the coffee shop. About one sarcastic comment that changed everything. About being invisible until the right person finally saw me. About finding home in the last place I expected, just a few floors away. Thank you so much for listening to Sarah and Emily's story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this journey of unexpected love and sarcastic coffee banter, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories that will warm your heart and make you believe in the power of being seen. Your support means everything.